we certainly set ourselves on a course towards two things, really. The first is about the absolute resolute commitment to building a non-racial party, a party that doesn't mobilize on the basis of race, but a party for all South Africans. This Congress launched our values, which are epitomized by freedom, fairness, and opportunity. And we want those values to be the bedrock of what South Africans celebrate, something they aspire to, and those who share our values need to come with us. The second of those objectives is that we must be a party that is growing. And so it was significant to have a Congress here at Nelson Mandela Bay, maybe perhaps much less known or will soon be well known, not famously, but my friend here, Ethel Trollip, who has just been elected as our federal chairperson, also as our mayoral candidate here in the city. And we want to ensure that we become the government here, and we strategically set our objectives towards governing more metros in Gauteng, and certainly retaining the ones we do. So it is significant, and I want to thank everybody for coming through here and congratulate the entire new leadership and say election 2016 starts first thing tomorrow morning. So let me take some questions if there are any. Thanks.
Questions? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name's Erin Conway-Smith. I'm with The Economist. I'm just wondering, sir, what your strategy will be for drawing to the DA the sort of young, frustrated, and in some cases quite angry black voters, the kind of people that the EFF has spoken to. How will you get them to vote DA?
Sure. Let me respond by saying one of the key strategic objectives that we're going to set forward is a party of activists, and we want to have a greater activist presence in communities. But I think we mustn't lose track of the fact that these are also young South Africans who overwhelmingly voted for the DA at Fort Hare, in the ANC's intellectual home, as you like. And one of the great things there is that actually when you have consistent presence, you make the issues the issues, you ultimately make sure that those who share your common values come out in numbers and support you. I mean, the ANC pulled out all their names, all their big guns, but it does prove the point that as a brand we're growing. It's a brand that young people are becoming more attracted to, and we'll certainly take it forward. One of my key objectives coming out of this is we want to be strong at making sure that our presence at universities also increases, so we can speak to that particular group of young people. So that's got to be a key focus for us.
Mr. Maimane, Isak du Plessis, monitor at the SABC. Today is the celebration of Mr. Mandela's inauguration, 10 May. It's the day that you became the first black leader of the DA. And you said to me the other day that the race don't count, but you said something beautiful just now, so you can't counter me on that. Is it of any importance to you?
Look, one of my greatest heroes in this country, I think for all of us, is someone like Nelson Mandela. And that today, I think we can't, when we begin this chapter, one of the things I'm most delighted about that is that we're a diverse leadership. And I think that's a dream that President Nelson Mandela stood for. And so I might come here today. Tomorrow a leader of a different race may emerge. But it's part of the fact that I think as a party we sat down and we said we wanted to elect the diverse leadership. We wanted to see a new leader come on board. I have a tough task ahead of me, ahead of Helen Zille. I bring a different story because of my own race and background, as she does. But it just begins a journey where we can build a reconciled, non-racial South Africa. And so I can never be more delighted that this is the party that espouses that value and still is the champion of that. So I guess in some ways the significance has to be this, that with President Nelson Mandela's passing, his values of a reconciled South Africa, a non-racial one, will remain alive, certainly in our party, and something we'll champion going forward.
Right,
Marina Lamprant from...
Sorry.
All right, it's Ndimpiwe Dingsoy from Bay TV. The question that I would love to ask is the question, yesterday, Mmusi Zille, when he was addressing the Congress, he mentioned one thing, which it was the winning vote is not always about good policies. It's also about building trust with the community, in fact, with the South Africa as a whole. So it seems like you are confident that you are taking over the Nelson Mandela Bay in the next local government elections. So have you did what he said, like building the trust with the community.
Can I give my colleague Ethel Trollope an opportunity to respond to that question, because it speaks directly to the fact that he'll be the mayoral candidate here. We certainly want to put as much resource and opportunity into that. You are correct when you say there's a question of trust, but I think we're showing some great growth. In fact, this election, the ANC was below 50% here. So I think Ethel Trollope can respond even further to that point.
Thanks very much, Mmusi. Thank you for that question. Mmusi said something just before you asked your question about activism and on the ground. We have, for the first time in the Democratic Alliance, had mayoral candidate leadership elections some 14, 15 months before the election, because we want to run a proper campaign where we don't leave anyone out of the campaign, we don't leave any community out of the campaign. So we are going to go to every single home in the city. We're going to create momentum where people will believe that the DA will listen to their challenges and that the DA will deal with those challenges. We're very fortunate that just over the border, which is not far from here, people have seen that the grass is greener on the other side. So what we have to do is to convince enough people in the city that they can have a Western Cape government in the Eastern Cape. And it's starting to resonate. And I don't want to underestimate the importance of victories like the SRC victory at Fort Hare, because, you know, it dispels the myth that the DA is a white party. It shatters that myth, and it also shatters the myth that the other party is going to stay in government forever. So we are convinced every day, with every victory and every inch we roll back from the ANC, that we will become the government, not only in Nelson Mandela Metro, but the rest of the country too. So we are steadfast. More and more activists, more and more contact with voters, more credibility, having leaders that won't let voters down, and we believe we have those kind of leaders, and we will win this metro.
Marina Lamprecht from Media 24 Newspapers. To Mmusi Maimane, Tony Leon said earlier today one of your first challenges will be on how you handle the losers, the people who didn't win for the positions, like Dr. Wilmot James. How do you handle them and the people who did not vote for you? Do you see yourself reaching out a hand to Dr. Wilmot James? In which way would you do that? And how will you unite the people who openly didn't vote for you and take them into the future with you?
Look, I stood up today, even in my addressing of Congress, to say my commitment is to build a united party that will take the DA forward. And that, in fact, people like Dr. Wilmot James and many others have a role to contribute in our party. We're not a party that purges people. I'm grateful for the results, because I think we carry an overwhelming confidence of the Congress, which is very helpful when you come out of a contestation such as we had, because I think it was actually quite an overwhelming result by the delegates out there today. I've already said that I'll be going out to as many provinces as we can, because ultimately we don't unite behind a person. We unite behind values and a vision for this party. I'm not building a party for Mmusi Maimane. I'm building a party that shares those values of freedom, fairness, and opportunity. So ultimately, it's a work now of going out, meeting as many of the delegates as possible in their respective provinces, and inviting them to that valued process, to the vision of this country, so that we can all unite behind that. And I know DA people, and I think the majority of those who voted for us have a confidence in saying we want to go out and win elections, and we'll set our goals and go forward. So I'm quite confident that we'll go forward. As for what Dr. James and anyone else does, I think we've got to negotiate that as we come out, because I can't prescribe today what his respective role will be.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mmusi, Anton Meyer from Jacaranda FM. You already answered my question about the unity, but I would just like to add on that. Do you think a year's time is enough for you, or would you have liked to have more time going into the local government elections? Thank you.
Look, time is everything, but one of the things that are important about our party is that we've actually got an exceptional team already in place. We've had provincial congresses, so provinces have already set themselves up to go towards an election. I think another thing that's also vital is that our operation remains intact and led quite exceptionally by Paul Bowie. So I think what we've got to do going forward is continue that momentum. We'll certainly be launching our election campaign, etc., etc. So I think a year is about sufficient. We'll take the journey forward and then ultimately begin to prepare for 2019.
Thank you. There's a yes.
All right. Thank you. I'm Owen Magocha from Love World News. My question is directly for Mr. Mmusi Maimane. I want to ask you, how will you deal with the issue of race in the party? Because generally the perception out there is that the issue of race is very sensitive in the Democratic Alliance, actually when it refers to the leadership and also the way people relate because of that race issue. How are we going to tackle and unite the party in terms of the racial differences in leadership?
Look, let me say this up front. The DA is not a party for racists. If you're a racist, you mustn't be in the DA and join another party. Our party is for people who believe in a reconciled, non-racist South Africa. That's why they've elected the leadership they have elected today. That's why equally so when we build, we talk about values. Those values transcend race. They sit down and somebody says, when you want a society that is fair, that's not a function of a particular race. That's a particular value system that you say, I want this country to be free of corruption. I want a country that whose leaders serve the people. So those values are non-racial and they transcend it. They are not classist. And I believe when we unite behind those values, we can sit down and say, we will build a party for all South Africans. And I think I've highlighted the point that, in fact, this is not a party for racists. So if you are a racist, homophobe, any of the sort, I think you must join another party.
Hi, Mmusi. Congratulations. Mahlatse from SABC. 2 questions. Obviously, you've heard around the furore around Verwoerd and what Alistair Sparks said yesterday. And we have not heard if the DA is distancing itself from his statement. So I guess as the new leader, you can give us an answer in terms of that. But secondly, your biggest challenge is, of course, dislodging the ANC. And the criticism has been around the fact that the DA spends so much of its time criticizing what is wrong with the ANC and not necessarily coming forward with the alternatives or what they are putting forward. What are your strategies in terms of getting those numbers that you want of winning all these metros, sure, winning over the ANC? Thanks.
Let me answer the first question and say that I think I, first of all, as a South African, know the work of Alistair Sparks. He's a seasoned journalist. He's written some very profound things. He's fought against apartheid. And I think yesterday he came to pay tribute to Helen Zille. I disagree with his comment on Verwoerd, but then I'm entitled to have my own view as he's entitled to have his own view. But I think without fail, we should never sit down and say that someone like Alistair Sparks, who's fought against Verwoerd, in fact, supports his policies. I think, as I sit here today, Verwoerd's policies are deplorable. They were evil. And as I sit here, and I think as a party, we've been quite clear in saying that we deplore the policies of Verwoerd. So I think the issue here can be interpreted in many ways. And I think we can define this in opinion, we do. But I think we must never forget the fact that here's a South African who served the people and has fought against apartheid, equally so. On the second issue, which is about dislodging the ANC, you would have noted that today we spent quite a significant amount of time building on a values-based charter. This Congress adopted that values charter. And it will be the message we will take to every single province, because we want to focus on speaking more about what the DA does and less about the ANC. The invitation to a non-racial South Africa is an invitation to all. There are some people who are still in the ANC who must come to us, because they recognize the fact that we'll be building on that dream, fighting for an economy that includes more people rather than is exclusive. Policies that set South Africa on the right course than the other way. So the issue here, as I've answered, is about articulating that vision. It's about working hard with activists on the ground to make sure you invite more people. And I'm certainly comfortable in the fact that as we've seen growth, we were the only party who's grown since 1994, and we'll continue to do so, mainly because we'll put activists on the ground, we'll put more people on the message of where we come from. And I believe there are South Africans who share those values that still may not yet vote for us, but I believe will soon, as we get on the campaign trail and share those values with them, will come on board and support us. So I'm certainly looking forward to that opportunity, and I believe those South Africans are out there, they are ready, and they are welcoming to our values charter.
Tulasizwe Semelane, ENCA, and the question that I'm going to ask, you've already started answering, Mmusi, about policy. You already started talking about the values charter that you adopted, but you also identified unemployment, poverty, and inequality as your real enemy as the DA. Just from a policy perspective, coming out of this Congress, what is the message? If you were to put it in bullet point, what would you say is the policy you're selling? I'm asking this because partly there was the issue of confusion about whether you are going with the NDP or what happened to your plan for jobs and growth of 8%. So what are you saying to South Africans coming out of this? And then secondly, very quickly, have you given any thought to what happens to the position of parliamentary leader now that you've been elected leader of the DA?
Well, let me... when we articulated those values of freedom, fairness, and opportunity, we then unpack and say, what does a free society look like? What are the advances of defending the Constitution of the Republic? How do we build a macroeconomic policy that attracts investments, stimulates small businesses, and ensures that we have a capable state that creates the environment for economic growth to occur? But it's based on the value for freedom. We talk about the fact that we want to build opportunities for young people. So we'll be releasing a whole lot of policy suites that speak to how we talk about that opportunity. We talk about a non-racial society, because I think we cannot be trapped into the prism of our past. We must build a future for South Africa. So in bullet points, it emerges out of those points about freedom. What does freedom look like? What are the values that we put in there? Secondly, about what is opportunity? How do we create a macroeconomic policy that grows? How do we make sure issues such as land reform aren't the things that hold us backwards, but they in fact empower more South Africans to go forward? There's still the principle about redress. I spoke at length about it even in the address today. How do we make sure we address a historical disadvantage for South Africans so we actually open more opportunities in the future? And I think those policies will be some things that will be brought out. And in fact, in a couple of weeks' time, we'll be doing a whole vision set that will communicate to more people. Today, this Congress was about adopting those values, and out of those, our policies will emerge out of them. So I think you can be clear today. It's that it's always freedom, fairness, and opportunity. And fairness speaks to how we deal with corruption and all those, so that we make sure that the powerful don't abuse their power. And it talks to how do we defend institutions. So there's many policies that will emerge out of this. Let me say about the role of parliamentary leader. Any organization goes through different phases. We went through a phase where Helen Zille was premier and you had a different parliamentary leader. They were going into a phase where that role will be consolidated. So I'll do both the job of leading the party and parliamentary leader. It's just the first.
Curry.
Karine du Plessis from City Press. I have two questions. First question is a sort of quick, short one. What is your first 3 items on your to-do list now as DA leader? And my second question is about gender. We see 2 women sitting there on the stage, but we had very few women contesting for leadership positions. And I know the DA doesn't believe in quotas, but do you feel that this is a potential problem? I can direct the question to you, but perhaps also to the women.
My first thing on the to-do list is to get over Congress. It's been a grueling campaign, so I'm really keen to get over it. But look, we have an administration that came before that had 2 different places. There was a team that worked with Helen Zille, there was a team that worked with me. So now there's a work that we've got to bring those 2 teams together. Obviously, the second objective is to go out to see as many provinces as possible so that we can meet with all the provincial leaders. And then ultimately, the thing that keeps me awake is, in thinking about this job is obviously how do we I was glad today, I was quite surprised actually that I won the fundraising award. I didn't expect that in the least bit. I was, yeah. So I think it's about making sure that we've got the capital resources to contest for the election coming up next year, because it's going to be an expensive one and we've got to go out and raise that money. So I want to get my hands fully dirty on that issue. On the question about gender, I think we don't set any quota for how many women leaders we should have and how many women leaders we shouldn't have. We give opportunities to anybody to contest for positions. But I don't think we should also see leadership that's simply just here. We should also, because we can't set quotas here to say, this is how many women we should have. We also have to look at our leadership in its broadest, which is about also provincial leaders, provincial chairs. So for example, when you come here in the Eastern Cape, the provincial chair here is Veliswa Mvenya. She's a phenomenal woman. She's gone through the ranks, she's contested for positions, she's right at the top. I think equally so, we must never forget that Helen Zille was in fact a female. Because I think she still is. She still is. Sorry. I meant in a leadership role that she serves as a female. And I think it's good for our party that we can sit here today and say that we're the party that, having allowed open opportunities for everybody, that we've had a woman leader, now we have a male, and I think in future we could have another female come and take leadership. I think it's great. I think it's a great opportunity. So I think it's about the principle of opportunity much less than the principle of saying you must have quotas and numbers that are set for people.
Phil, where do you want to add?
Thanks, James. Karen, I seem to be dealing with this quite a lot. I hate the possibility of ever being considered to have become part of the DA leadership because I'm a female. I always say, even when I mentor other ladies outside, we better run for positions because we are competent to do that. And one of the things that underpins our values within the DA is something called fit for purpose, which means when we go into positions, we know we can deliver on those positions, rather than diving into the deep end and not being able to deliver on what we've been mandated to do. Thank you.
I don't think I should add anything, but I think, as Mmusi quite correctly referred to the bigger team, don't forget all our female mayors as well, and many of our councillors. So yeah, I think our team is very gender sensitive, and we do use our opportunities.
Thank you. I don't know where the other mic. There it is. Okay, go for it.
Ntate Mema. Stumo Business Day newspaper. First, congratulations for the victory. I'm going to ask the question perhaps because we're getting used to, language that is clear and not ambiguous in a political dispensation. I read one of the party's resolutions yesterday. I believe it speaks to the issue of black economic empowerment. I think it was Fairness Resolution number 3, something like that. You opt, as the Democratic Alliance, of course, you opt to use disadvantaged people. And we've gotten to knowing that there's designated groups which are defined specifically as disadvantaged people. So we'll be talking black people, we'll be talking women, we'll be talking youth, we'll be talking people with disabilities. In short, is disadvantaged people the non-racial way of saying black people, women, people with disabilities, and youth, and And the second question on the back of that, your term disadvantaged people lacks historical context. Again, in the dispensation, we used to previously disadvantaged people, which gives it the historical context. Why the option to frame it like that?
I think you must also see our values charter as a statement of aspiration that acknowledges the fact that there's a society that we want to build and we want to take it forward. I want to take you back to our policy congress that was held, I think it was November last year. That Policy Congress issued out a statement directly that said, we accept the fact that race and disadvantage are not the same things, but race in South Africa is still a proxy for disadvantage. We made that statement to say we believe in black advancement. It was as specific as that. It also outlined the points about how we see broadening opportunity. And broadening opportunity in the BBBEE also includes other dynamics of procurement, other issues about societal impact, and ultimately issues of ownership, etc. I must remind you that the objective we're trying to go to is that race does not become a determinant for disadvantage, which is the point I made in the address. Yet, without fail, I've said it today and I'll say it again, it is not an error, or we've never been ambiguous on this issue. We accept the fact that black South Africans in the main have been disadvantaged by our past. Nobody disagrees. I mean, I think that statement is quite clear. That where we want to get to is to build a society, and we must accept that young people are equally disadvantaged. I made the point 66% of them form part of the 35% who are unemployed. We've got to work harder towards that, so that one day, the opportunities that are open to South Africans, the destination, surely, must be building a diverse society, which is the objective. That's why the framing of the Values Charter comes out of that point. But we accept that the problem is still one that is racial.
Sorry, Marianne?
Hi, is it on? Yes. Right. Sorry, quick question. In terms of what you've been saying, if it should turn out that a year down the line after the 2016 local government elections, you have not achieved what you say today you will achieve, will you resign?
I think, let me make it an easier one and say, let me deal with today the fact that I've just been elected as leader of the DA. To then already be planning an exit strategy would be wrong.
Sorry, yes, ma'am.
Hi.
I think it's on.
Natasha, also from the Business Day. I have a quick question on your mayoral candidates for the rest of the country. When will that process start? I see Apple's already been selected for PE. For example, in Tshwane, Johannesburg, etc. And then the second question is on Mmusi's comments on, in a few weeks' time, you're going to be outlining policies which will emerge from the vision. Can you explain that process a little more? You know, that will emerge from the Values Charter. Can you explain that process? And is it going to mark sort of, you know, are those policies that are coming out of it going to be based on this particular Values Charter?
Just dealing with the mayoral candidates for the time being, as you say, we have already chosen one of those mayoral candidates. We are working closely with the provinces to determine when they would like those mayoral candidates to be elected. I am the chairman of what is called the Mayoral Electoral College, and as soon as the provinces indicate that they would like that process to start, it starts. We have broadly two categories of municipalities. The one where we're not in government, and that's designating the mayoral candidates in that process will happen in the next couple of weeks and months. The other category is where we are already in government and where there might be an incumbent that wants to stand for re-election. That process will happen much closer to the election.
I mean, in answer to the second question, which is about that process had already began. Our parliamentary MPs all have respective key portfolios that they have to deal with in unpacking the very respective aspects of where the Values Charter drives. So it will be based on the Values Charter. It will articulate some of the policy spectrum that we'll bring through. And then ultimately we need to share a vision about where South Africa needs to be. So that's what I mean when I say that will be coming in the next couple of weeks.
Shanti?
Hi, thanks. I'm Shanti from Independent. Could you explain to us, because yesterday during the discussion on the Values Charter, I think among Congress delegates there's an understanding, there was a discussion from Paul Bowie's side about research that's been provided on why it was necessary. Could you please explain to us properly the genesis of the Values Charter, why there's been a need for this constitutional amendment? And then secondly, it has been described as a major departure from liberal democratic traditions within the DA. That was clearly articulated by Wilmot James to me. But also Belinda Bozzoli and Ian Ollis had asked for just a small insertion, which was almost unanimously sort of not voted for by the delegates. So can you just explain to us what the DA's real position will be on the individual versus families, or whether it's just an issue of communicating the DA's position to non-liberal, non-traditional voters? Thanks.
I think Paul can speak more extensively about the research process that has been gone. The document has gone to many of the structures, constituencies, and has been discussed. And there were, I think, well over 5,000 submissions that came back from different structures. So it was put forward from our federal executive, and then it went through all the structures, and then it comes back for adoption here at Congress. So that's been part of the process. I think what we mustn't do is say that to suggest that people exist within a family is illiberal. I think Patricia DeLille argued that point quite strongly yesterday. We still stand for the rights of individuals. We accept that those individuals live within certain structures. And I think the document makes that quite clear. The document, furthermore, does not even prescribe what the type of family must look like. It argues the case that even, in fact, a man and a man, or a woman and a woman, whatever the construct is, a single mother, single fathers, we have different constructs of families. So I don't think the document is illiberal in the way that they were arguing. It's simply understanding that the fact that liberal politics in South Africa, and certainly globally, are engaged with the question about saying, how do we deal with constructs such as race? How do we deal with constructs such as religion? Even as an example, if you go to Europe, I just came back from the Liberal International Congress. The argument there is, how do you deal with people who are organized on the basis of religion? I don't think that's illiberal to ask the question. It's important to be able to put that forward. It's been adopted as part of our constitution. It doesn't suggest that our constitution is dead. It becomes something that we live by, and we guide our policies on that basis. It's something that's been working through, and that's why I think we must continue. The dialogue will continue.
Where's that other microphone? Okay. No, sorry, it was okay.
Oh,
yes, please.
We're Makinana from City Press newspaper. Mmusi, what role do you see Helen playing going forward, besides being the Premier of the Western Cape? I don't see her sitting back and watching you lead without interfering. So what sort of relationship are you looking forward to? I mean, I'm sure you will tap in, but I mean, you're also seen as somebody that may have been pushed by Helen to be where you are, both in Parliament and also in this new position.
Well, to answer your last statement, Helen Zille has one vote in this Congress. The delegates have the right to vote for their leader. My relationship with Helen is actually quite good. I've enjoyed working with her even as parliamentary leader. Because one thing I know of Helen, and I think that's a story that's untold. Others want to call her all sorts of things. They want to call her a dictator. But one thing I know for a fact about Helen is that she lets people get on with it. That's been the nature of my relationship with her. We meet occasionally, we discuss what's happening with Parliament and the party, and so we carry on. And that's why I respect her, because she's the ultimate person who sits back and says, if you've been elected to a leadership position, you must get on with the job of doing that position. And you can ask any provincial leader or any other person. As far as her role is concerned, look, Helen, still as part of being the Premier of the province, will have a crucial role in being able to help us in areas that we govern. That's key. She still fulfills that role. She also serves in the role of being able to fundraise for us. But I haven't specifically, because we needed to get through this Congress, I haven't had an opportunity to discuss with her what she feels. She may very well want to step aside for a little bit and allow other things to happen. I'd certainly like her to help us in many other areas, such as fundraising, because she's a very good fundraiser, as the award was given to her today. And we still will need her skill in that regard. So I'd hope to have a conversation with her as soon as we can.
Okay.
Charter, from what we were hearing Paul Bowie talking about, I mean, the extent of the research that went into it, it's more about being able to, that you found out that your prospective voters don't actually understand what the Open Opportunity Society really means. So it's about a more legible or understandable offering that you want to make to them. But it seems to be a very technically driven process. I mean, it's not like the values sort of emerging from the hearts and souls of the members. It's actually something that is being generated by folks outside. So I'd like you to comment on that. And then the DA is possibly, I mean, for young white men in this country, forgive me for using the racial term, but for young white men in this country wanting to get into politics, the DA is the only place. Now, many of them are finding themselves at the, shall I say, cutting edge of black advancement, at the risk of sounding a cliche. But it's a fact. And it's generated a kind of perception that people like you, talented, massive potential, are essentially proxy for these, quote, towel-flicking locker room boys who want to get ahead within the party, but actually can't do it on their own terms because of the colour of their skin, and the juncture at which your party finds itself right now. Can you comment on that, please? And can you also share with us when you intend to reshuffle your shadow cabinet in Parliament?
Anything else? Yes. Other questions will be written. We'll get written submissions furthermore. Look, it hasn't been. The initial process of the Values Charter may have come across as very technocratic, but I actually think, I mean, I'm part of a branch in Cosmos City, and that document served in that particular branch. I wasn't at the particular branch meeting, but it served there. And the people were able to give input through their provinces, give input in respective ways. This was an internal document, and I think branch members, branch structures were able to actually work through the process. And I think the submissions have been good, which is something I welcome. It's gone through provinces. I mean, Gauteng in the PEC had its own submissions that they brought forward, various structures. So I think it's actually, even in it's gone through the organic part of the party and its machinery. So I'm quite comfortable that the views that are put forward in the Values Charter come from all the members of the party. The question about the young white males, I think it's something that's important to understand our selection criteria. We open up opportunities for anybody and everybody. Our selection panels and processes, as you know, also attract people from outside and also attract people from inside. I'm quite comfortable that through the process and what the federal executive does, it's not like we sit down and have some quota mechanism that eventually we end up with opening up opportunities for many people who'd come through, and they have come through. The suggestion, though, the further suggestion, that there's a form at which people have an ability to control other people, I think is wrong. Certainly not true of our party. I certainly wouldn't sit here and say to myself, look, that I'm here as a proxy for other people. Certainly cannot be true. Contestations take place. Let's take a very key contest that took place today. Thomas Walters and Anthony Bernardi contested for a position. 2 white males. One of them won. And so that's the outcome of the electorate. We should accept that. So any white South African who wants to contest for a position has been allowed to do so. And they come out and they do it. And they contest for elections. And I think the electorate then deliver the results. There can be no other form of manipulation that comes through that. As for the reshuffle in Parliament, to be quite honest with you, I'm still getting over being elected today as the leader of the DA. Can I leave it at that for now?
Can I answer this?
I'm okay.
Gay, as a young white woman like you are, you would know that politicians are getting younger and younger. And if you look at the composition of the Democratic Alliance representatives in Parliament, you will see that we probably have the youngest members of Parliament. They are men and women. They're black and white. We had 2 SRC presidents stand up on the stage today that are both women. You had a middle-aged white male win a contest today against 2 young black, prominent, up-and-coming DA leaders. So if you listen to what Mmusi said about non-racialism, you can't talk about non-racialism if you don't practice non-racialism. And I think we are the only party that actually practices it. That's why a lot of people don't understand what's happening in the DA. It's happening organically because we're a party of opportunity for all. Young women like you, young men like me, and younger men like Mmusi.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Sipe Magana from the Daily Dispatch. Mine is for Mr. Trollip. Sir, considering that, okay, you've been elected as the federal chair, and also you're the provincial leader and mayoral candidate of this municipality. What are your immediate plans for the DA in the province and also in this region, considering that the local government elections are looming?
Well, first of all, I think that my candidacy in the Nelson Mandela Metro could not have been given a better kickstart than being elected as the chairperson of this party, because it sends a message to the people of Port Elizabeth and Nelson Mandela Bay that the Democratic Alliance is serious about sending its top leadership to come and win this metro. We know that it's not going to be easy. We know what the figures look like and what the demographics of the city look like. But we know that if we work hard enough, we will be able to turn it around. So you mentioned I hold a couple of positions. I've now just got an additional position. I have made it quite clear that should I win the mayoral position next year, that I will relinquish my provincial leadership position. And I know that there are people that are fully competent and capable to take that over. But apropos another question that was asked about whether our leader will resign if we don't win the metro. Well, I'd like to put it this way. Prize boxing fight. And no one said to Manny Pacquiao, will you resign?
Well, that is where we are going to leave it for now. That press conference, of course, continues. But we're going to go to Joburg now.